Hi there, Shauna Simon here of SLS Academy, Homestager Training Redesign for Tomorrow's Homestagers. What I want to talk to you about today is basically what I've learned from the hospitality industry. I spent approximately 15 years bartending all through my university days, my first career, and even when I was starting my homestaging business. Bartending helped me to pay the bills while I built the business up. And if there is one thing that I can say about the hospitality industry, and believe me, there's a lot of things I can say about how wonderful it is. But one of the greatest things that I found from the industry was just their customer service skills and what you learn about how to treat people that you're working with and that you're working for. And so I wanted to share some of the best things that I've learned over the years from my hospitality days that I try to apply to my everyday business as well. So the first is don't point, show. And what I mean by this is if a guest would ask us where the restrooms were, for example, we would walk them over to the ladies' room or the men's room, as opposed to simply pointing or giving directions, turn left here, turn right there. So when it comes to home staging, for example, sometimes you have to show your client what your vision is. So, and I understand that in staging, generally what we ask is for our clients simply to trust our expertise and let us come in and do everything. But if, for example, you're in the consultation and you're providing a DIY type consultation, maybe you can show the client sort of what one shelf style looks like. They've got a whole set of bookshelves. Let me show you what I mean by varying the heights, laying down some books, adding some accessories, and do one shelf for them to give them an idea. Not only will this help to solidify your expertise and show them what they need to do to prepare the house, but they're going to be that much more inclined potentially to also hire you for those additional services because you've just shown them what you can do. Another example of this might be in terms of getting hired for an actual project. So, you do a bid for whether it's an occupied or a vacant staging. Again, you're asking your clients to trust you and your expertise, and maybe it takes just showing them a little bit of your portfolio or a little bit of your vision. Perhaps, they have a very unique home and you can show them another unique home that you did work in. I'm not saying you have to show them exactly what staging pieces you're going to be bringing in, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to show a little bit as opposed to just pointing or telling them verbally. It's a very visual business. Another thing that we always learned in hospitality is that if you're walking through the restaurant, and actually before working in hospitality, I worked at Walmart as well. And I will admit, this was back when I was a teenager, of course. And it was actually something I was taught back at the time that it was when Walmart first opened in Canada, actually. And the right of way yields to the customers or to the guests of the restaurant. So what that means is when you're walking through, anytime we would cross paths with a guest or a customer, we would stop and let them pass first, because essentially what we're saying is your time is more valuable than ours. You are more important than we are. We want you to go first. And we're showing that we value them. So how does this apply to home staging? Well, it basically means put your customers first. Your needs are not what's most important. Your clients' needs are what's most important. That doesn't mean that you need to sacrifice anything from your needs, but you need to make sure that you are always representing what they are looking for, what their expectations are. Another thing that I learned from hospitality is it definitely pays off to remember more than someone's name. I mean, remembering a name is fantastic. They do love that. But I will tell you that my guests appreciated it when they walked in and I was already pouring their glass of wine for them from their favorite selection, or starting to mix their martini, or if they wanted to order the same sort of food, I always had that ready and at the top of my head. So how does this apply to your home staging business? Try to remember what the kids' names were, the animals' names were, or any other unique aspects of the house or the client themselves. Maybe they told you that they are moving out of town. Where are they moving to? Whatever they tell you, if you can try to make a bit of a mental note, and then when you get back to the office, even write it in. If you have physical files, write it in the physical file. If you have a database system, that's even better, write it in there. And that way, the next time that your clients contact you about any sort of services, you can also say, hey, how did that turn out? Even if it's as simple as when you met with your client, maybe they had a party they were going to that night or an event coming up. Next time you speak with them, hey, how was that event? How, whatever they were working on. Clients really appreciate when you remember those details. And of course, our memories are not always as stellar as we would like them to be. So don't be afraid to write some notes down. Another thing that hospitality taught me, if you don't have the answers, ask someone. When that fails, fake it and hope no one notices. Now, in home staging, I really don't want you faking it necessarily. If you don't have the answers, I do want you to ask someone. If you find a challenging space, it's okay if you don't have the answers for your clients right that second and right that day. If you find a challenging space, there's nothing wrong with saying to the clients, you know what, I have a whole forum of colleagues that I can reach out to, and I'm going to see what I can get from their opinions, and I'll get back to you at such and such a time with some other ideas for this space, because I'm a little bit stumped by it. Clients actually like it when you're stumped by their space. They think it's really cool to tell their friends, you know, that problem area we've been dealing with for the last 5 years, the home stager couldn't even figure out what to do with it. So don't be afraid to utilize your resources in the various home staging groups or any other colleagues that you have. If you're a part of a local RISA chapter, feel free to reach out to the members there or post in those groups. So definitely want to use your resources. Now, when all else fails, when I say fake it and hope no one notices, what I mean by that is always do your best, basically. I don't mean to actually fake things necessarily, but remember that you are skilled and trained. Sometimes it's just your confidence that's lacking in at these moments. So do your best to get the answers that you need, and when that fails, trust your gut and go with it. So this is one of my favorite ones. No matter how badly you screw up, apologize, take responsibility, fix it, and smile. Okay. I think that most people, I think it's within our nature generally that we're fairly forgiving when someone admits a wrong. It's when they don't admit the wrong that we have a hard time forgiving. So if you've made a mistake for a client in any way, make it better for them. Do what you can to make it better for them and admit your faults. Don't point fingers. Don't make excuses. That's the whole point of this. So if I was worked in the restaurant and someone received the wrong food order, for example, instead of saying, oh, well, the kitchen screwed up. I clearly entered it improperly. The kitchen screwed up. No, the correct response is, I am terribly sorry. Let me take care of that for you right away. Doesn't matter whose fault it is. So when I'm working in a staging project, sometimes the contractor calls me and there's been an issue. We're doing a renovation. There's been an issue. Something's happened. And all I start hearing is pointing fingers. Well, the painter did this and the drywaller did this and this should have been done already over here. And all I want to hear from the contractor is, how are we going to fix it? Eventually, I'm sure we'll want to figure out whose problem it was, who caused the issue in the first place. But your number one priority when something goes wrong is to fix it. Make it right for the client, apologize to them and fix it. Don't spend too much time trying to point fingers and figure out whose fault it is. Just work on fixing the problem, especially if you feel that the issue comes from someone that you recommended or someone that's part of your team. Now, when things get crazy, and they always do in the home staging industry, as they do in hospitality, we call it being in the weeds in hospitality. The best advice that I have is keep moving forward. You will get to the end eventually. And I know that sounds ridiculously simple, but you don't really have much of a choice but to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Things get tough in the staging industry sometimes, but if you keep moving forward, you will get to the end, I promise, and you will enjoy it. It will be very relaxing. Sometimes there's a nice glass of wine at the end of that. It doesn't feel like work if you're having fun. So I hope that if you are in the home staging industry or you are considering being a part of the home staging industry, that you are doing it because you have a passion for helping others, a passion for making things beautiful. And that's really what you're following, because if you are motivated more by money and the job of it, you're more likely to burn out sooner than later. You get what you pay for. This is with anything in life, and in hospitality is especially true. If you want the quick $5 burger, it's probably going to taste like a $5 burger. It never hurts to ask. How many times have you gone to the restaurant and you're out with a friend or something and they say, so I was wondering if I could get this salad, but instead of this topping on it, can I get this topping on it instead? And can you substitute this and add this? And that's one thing that restaurants have come to accommodate is any sort of special request. So keep in mind that sometimes it just never hurts to ask. So sometimes when your client, this goes two ways. Sometimes when your client's asking you to make some allowances for them, it doesn't mean you have to give in. They're probably okay if you say no, but they're probably thinking in their mind, it wouldn't hurt to ask this. The same goes for you. If you need a favor from a client, such as requesting a testimonial, maybe you need to call in a favor from a supplier to help you meet a budget or to help you meet a timeline or whatever it is. Just always be understanding when you're asking the question. I think that's the biggest thing in hospitality, when someone would say, I'm really sorry to be a pain, but is it possible? As opposed to demanding, I need you to do this, 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 and this. So always think about the approach that you take to it as well. Uh, Snapping your fingers in hospitality very rarely works, or waving money around very rarely works. Does not get you things faster, but sometimes a simple smile will. It's amazing how far a smile can go. So whenever possible, try to do your interactions in person with your suppliers, with your real estate agents. Not always possible, of course, but modern technology also makes it easier to have face-to-face conversations. And when you're working with your client, which usually is face-to-face, make sure you're smiling through it, because it's amazing what you can get in terms of, you're giving them all these recommendations. It's amazing what you can get them to do when you're smiling the whole time, right? It's obviously a little bit more to it than that, but nonetheless, a smile definitely goes a long way. In hospitality and in life, shut up and listen is a very effective strategy. Sometimes you need to stop talking and listen. What are your clients' needs? Especially when you're working in a situation that might be a little bit challenging or difficult. So perhaps the clients have split up in some way. Maybe there's been a death in the family. Really listen to, or maybe it's just, a single mom who's incredibly crazed out, busy, and is really looking for some assistance. When you listen, you can find the right tools to assist them, and you may even be able to upsell some additional services. Don't be afraid to state the obvious. So in hospitality, this would be, that sizzling plate is really hot. The suicide wings are very spicy. All these seem obvious, but sometimes they don't really hurt repeating, because if I don't tell someone that plate is hot, they're probably going to touch it, regardless of the fact that literally the food on it is sizzling. So the same thing goes in home staging. Don't forget to make your bed before the showing. Seems like an obvious thing, but how many times have you seen those MLS photos where the bed's still not made? Everybody has a story. Everyone in life has a story. Don't pretend you know what it is. Okay? If you've ever been through anything difficult in your life, which I'm sure you have, I don't know anyone who hasn't. It's very difficult to face the day-to-day. And sometimes you're so caught up in yourself and you're looking around and thinking, you know what, no one else has any idea how badly I'm hurting on the inside and what I'm going through. Or maybe it's as simple as judging someone for what they're wearing, for the car that they drive. So don't assume that just because a house is a low price point that the clientele is going to be anything but amazing. Don't assume that just because the family looks so perfect that they actually are. So just be really careful with the assumptions that you make. Everyone has a story. Don't pretend you know what it is. Okay, and just be understanding and compassionate at all times. When all else fails, cheers to another day, right? There's always another day behind the next one. So if we're lucky, of course, but start over tomorrow. When you're having a bad day, just start over the next day. You get a fresh, new, clean slate every single morning, and I hope that you take the most advantage of that because every day truly is a blessing. So hopefully you enjoyed some of these tips. Hopefully you can apply them in your own life and in your own business, and I thank you for joining me.